Hi, it's Mickey Dolenz here. You're listening to Inspirado Projecto.
All right, it is 5:04. It is 3:29, March 29th. Thank you, Mickey Dolenz, for opening up this episode. I'm so excited to share this episode with you because you're going to hear of two very passionate visionaries. Two guys who just dive deeply into these rabbit holes. Martin Schmidt, who is responsible for the restoration of the Golden State Theater. This all takes place before a Yachtly cruise show in Monterey at the Golden State Theater. And Martin Schmidt got together a group of people, and I asked him, what would you call, did you guys have a name? He said, no, I didn't have a name. I said, what would be a good name for everybody? And he said, well, how's about we call it the Golden State Theater Restoration Society? And I said, that's a phenomenal name. So Martin Schmidt and Gary Parks were instrumental in getting this whole team together. He knows so much about the history of the Golden State Theater. He knows so much about the history, about just the whole area. And we're also going to talk to Christo Roppolo, who is a nearby resident, and he has had many encounters with UFOs, which is his own rabbit hole. He's formed a really interesting relationship with these extraterrestrials, and the way I first heard about Christo was the documentary The Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs. Now, there's a second one called The Man Who Sees UFOs. That is on Vimeo Plus, which I still need to watch. And he's also shooting a third documentary. So he brought his cameraman along with, and I'll give you his name later on in the program. He brought his cameraman along with and recorded some of our interview. So that's an honor to know that I could possibly show up in this next documentary. So, all right. Well, what we're going to get to next is Cowboy. Cowboy is the production manager of the Golden State Theater. He's a phenomenal guy. He's very accommodating to me when I first got there, and Yachtly crew. We loved playing the Golden State Theater. I love everything about that theater, the vibe, everything about that, man. Just a good vibe. So what's interesting is that the interview that I conducted with Christo was in the theater balcony. I believe it was I believe it was seat 217, I think. I'll reconfirm that. I'll see. But Christo said that was the seat that he'd always sit in when he'd watch movies there at the Golden State Theater. So it's like, it's astounding. It's astounding to think that along this time, Christo had seen the building as it was getting restored. Meanwhile, Martin was doing the restoring of the building. I mean, it's incredible. So, thank you, Cowboy. If you had not listened to my wild questions about the miniature Golden State Theater right there in the lobby, it would not have led to this extraordinary interview. So thank you. All right. Without further ado, we're going to listen to my initial meeting with Cowboy, and he's going to tell me a little bit about the Golden State Theater. All right. Then we have something from Man Behind the Machine. He's got a question. All right. Then we're into the very first part of Christo Roppolo. Thanks for listening to Inspirado Projecto. Okay, Okay, so it was, all right, well, first of all, can you introduce yourself for the at-home listeners?
I'm Cowboy. I'm the production manager and technical director at Golden State Theater.
I love it. So you're telling me about the sign here, and it was called the Golden State, and then they were worried about some bad weather, so they just took out the whole sign because it was too tall, right?
Yeah, well, originally, this is what it was. 1926 is what it was. And then, so no big sign. And then, I want to say this is probably 1931 or so, they added, at the end of the Depression, they added a giant sign and, a big reopening, added this metal thing, which is it's not on there, you can sort of see it in that picture. And then there was a storm within a few years of that, and they made them cut the sign down. So what they did, instead of the signs, they just cut it in half, added
They just chopped it.
Yeah,
All right, let's just splice it.
That's the top of the building, right? And this thing goes
15,
20 feet over the top of the building. So this is the top of the building. They just cut it flush with the top of the building, changed the name of the business to State Theater, and this became the flagship for the State Theater Company. And then years later, when they restored it and it became changed hands, it was a United Artists building for a long time. Long time, United Artists Theater. And then they changed the name back to Golden State Theater.
God, that is awesome. How long did it take for the guy to build this little miniature here?
I don't know. I would.
How long has it been here for?
I think he built this in 2006, so it's been a while.
Does he hang out here a lot?
I'll text him. See if he wants to come on down.
That is so great.
He texted me last night something about the organ.
So is that the mayor in there in the projection booth that you were telling me about? Mm-hmm. That's a picture of him?
I think it's the guy on the right is Buck Russo.
Oh my God.
Former
that is so
mayor of
crazy
town.
when you think about that. The mayor is up there.
Oh my God.
He's running your movies.
Yeah.
It's like...
And then, the old, like I said, the old timers would
oh my God.
Tell me about how their dad would be like, "That's the mayor of town." Like Frank would say, "That's the mayor of town going up to change the."
Yeah, he's running your movie. And then you said the city council meetings happened up there too?
Oh yeah, he would have. They called it the walls were green at the time, and so he called it his green room office, and which is strange for theater folk to think, because green rooms really were for the. I don't know, but that was what they called it, the green room office.
Oh my God, that's incredible. So how long have you worked here?
I've been here. It'll be 8 years in September. Yeah,
Eight years.
Part of the building now. It's hard to get rid of it now. Hopefully.
So I know you were you're reluctant to talk about any of the activities that go on here. However, I just got to ask this. If you could just talk in general senses, how soon after you started working here did you start noticing interesting, paranormal activity?
Shortly after, and
wow.
I would say probably in waves of that's sort of why I say I don't like to talk about them, because I feel like the more I have acknowledged their existence and given energy towards that, the more they've given me, and I think I kind of freaked myself out. So I've sort of let that backseat a little bit, but I don't feel like any of the spirits are bad, necessarily.
So you can sense a vibe?
Yeah, I think so.
Happening?
I think so. I think especially as you, they're sort of in three different spaces. There's and this is why I'm actually texting Martin, because he was the one who told me about this. He said there were 6 spirits here at some point, and tied to, because they called it a medium, right? And they said there were 6 spirits that were tied to the theater. 3 of them were transient spirits. They had no actually business being tied to the theater, and 3 of them were ghosts that did have business there. So the medium asked the 3 that weren't tied if they want to move on. They moved on, and the 3 that stayed are supposedly the, But I think at least as I've interacted with them, it seems to be they're in 3 different spaces. There's kind of one that hangs out in the auditorium, and there's sort of one that's in the basement, and then there's the projection booth.
Wow!
And I don't think that the projection booth ghost is Buck Russo. I think it might be a different
Wouldn't it be interesting if it was? He's
like,
I am so tied to this theater. I got to stay in that projection room.
Yeah. Well, he was actually the projectionist for there was 4 theaters on Alvarado Street at that time, maybe even more throughout the years. But there was smaller. This was always the biggest one, but there were smaller movie houses, even older than this one. There's doors on the front of the theater. On the emergency exit that came from the Monterey Theater, which is where the Dali Museum is now. And
wait, Dali Museum?
Yeah, Salvador.
There's a Dali Museum here?
Yeah, Salvador Dali.
How close?
Very walkable. Before you hit the water.
So I could... when I walk down this street here, just walk straight down?
Yeah.
Dude, I love Salvador Dali.
Yeah.
I was just looking. The bookstore is closed. It's closed right now, but I was looking through the window and I was just looking at a Salvador Dali coffee table book because I've got a few at home. So I'm like, Dali, and then I hear you tell me about this.
That was a movie theater way back in the day, and that one was built in 1904, and so we have the front doors from that old theater on our emergency exit.
Wow,
so it's a neat hand-me-down from history.
Man, and it just like the way that this it's like rocks. The way that this is built, it's like it's interesting. The way that you see like what looks like rubble, kind of like kind of like poking out a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be a Moorish castle. The inside and out. That's the theme throughout the whole thing. So I don't know if it is supposed to emulate stone or some sort of.
Because we did see those seats upstairs too, which looked like thrones or something.
Stuff like that, yeah. Well, I do have to run upstairs and grab some printouts now that I've got my keys. But I'll be back around, and I texted Martin to see if he's around.
Cool.
He might want to come around.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Wow, this is great. I'm in the Golden State Theater now. He, of course, just explained to us what was going on, and I'll be able to interview Christoph upstairs. He said that the reason why his friend moved out here is because of the documentary Curse of the Man Who Sees UFOs. He said his friend moved out here because of that. Oh my gosh. This is the other thing too. This is the other extra thing, the other really cool thing too. He opened up underneath the stage the old pipe organ and he let me play it. I just played this old organ that's like 100 years old. And he was showing me there are like these little, you push the little knobs down there and it opens up the sound coming through. He said they used to, this is a theater, 1920, my God. And so he said that they used to play movies here, and then of course it was silent movies, so then they would play the music along with it, and wow. Man, this vibe here is so good. Anyway, we will be back with more. Thanks for listening to Inspirado Projecto.
Inspirado man here. I wanted to ask you what you thought was the difference between special effects and CGI. I know there's a lot of talk about CGI. You just don't hear the word special effects. So what do you think the difference is?
Thank you, man behind the machine, for leaving a voice message. By the way, any of you who want to, if you want to leave a voice message for me to play on here, remember, this is a participation. You are co-creating this experience with me. You might just be listening at this moment. However, there might be one moment where you go, you know what? Time for me to visit anchor.fm/Inspirado Projecto. Time for me to visit anchor.fm/Inspirado Projecto and click that voice message button and leave a crazy message on there. Tell me your dreams. Tell me your synchronicities, epiphanies, strange sightings, all that stuff, fringe theories, dreams, all that stuff. You can put it right in there. So this is Man Behind the Machine. Thank you, Man Behind the Machine. He's a frequent contributor to this. He's also got his own podcast filled with phenomenal AI stuff, filled with phenomenal information, cutting edge, right on the fringe, baby. Surfing right on the fringe. That space of liminality. It's right between, I always thought about this with a black hole. There's the black hole, then there's the not black hole, and then there's that edge right on the edge, right before it becomes a black hole and right before it becomes a non-black hole. There's that something that's going on with that edge. There's something that's just not allowing the other side to touch the other side. There's something that's cutting right through there. That's Man Behind the Machine. Special effects. I can tell you this. Special effects, from what I've been around, special effects are otherwise known as practical effects, which is instead of doing... Well, CGI is computer-generated image, which means like Transformers. Those are computer-generated images. Wouldn't it have been cool if they made them, if they actually did them with marionettes or something, or if they, I don't know, something that was real, and then they could add some CGI on top of it later. Special effects is a difference between a let's say a real Yoda, puppet Yoda, versus a computer-generated Yoda. Something you can interact with right there on set. That's why it's a big deal if you make horror films that are made with practical effects, with special effects, because what you're dealing with is something that's right there on set. Fake blood that's going to go and splat right at that moment when you need it to, rather than putting it into a computer and going, okay, computer, we need you to put those special effects in there right now. We want to show someone, beaming something out of their third eye. How do we do that practically? Well, maybe you put a light bulb in there, and you hide some fake flesh over it, so it looks like it's like the glowing out of their forehead rather than going back in there with CGI. So, anyway, I just had to say that. In case that might mean something to you. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Something that is not a special effect, okay, something that is not CGI, is this conversation right here, right now. Really big shoe with Christo Roppolo. This man has seen so many UFOs, has had a whole life of seeing of very interesting paranormal experiences, and it's fun because when you go down this rabbit hole trail, you get to see how one thing leads to another and leads to another. So, without further ado, and certainly without further ado, here's Christo Roppolo. Thank you for listening to Inspirado Projecto.
Not really a good place to go swimming.
Yeah.
But it is very, very trippy up there, and there's a lot of UFOs up there.
Yeah.
My friend's dad had an experience up there where they were hunting a deer.
Yeah.
And they saw this deer, and they all lined up to take the deer out. And as they were doing that, an orb moved right in front of them and knocked them all out. When they woke up, the deer was laying there, but it was like kind of in a liquefied state. It was all smushed up like it had been run over or something. And they were all covered with some kind of white ash. One of them died on the way to the hospital, and the other two survived, but they were in the hospital with conditions that were kind of like the flu or something for months before they caught out. Yeah.
Sort of radiation exposure or some shit.
Maybe they were mining some mercury out of there and just zapped them with a little mercury ray or something. You never know, because those places, like I said, are super mineral rich.
Yeah.
And that's also a place where I had a sighting up on the where the Boy Scout camp entrance is that you go down the trail. Uh-huh. There's a view place up there, and we had a sighting up there too. It's a really crazy place. So there you go.
That's awesome.
That's one I haven't told anybody before.
Yeah,
so.
Cool. Well,
what are we going to do now, folks?
I got to run down there and set up for this band.
Thank you. I just had to have you meet him.
Great to meet you.
Peace. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for finding a spot for us to record this. So where would you feel comfortable?
Anywhere. Yeah, well, let's go up here. Or
no, on top of here. That way we have the view.
Oh.
Yeah, that's good.
Ooh, that's a beautiful view.
Okay, so we'll sit here. You can go this way then and that way if you want to with the cameras. We'll sit in this row.
Yeah.
How's that? I think I actually used to sit in this seat all the time.
This was your seat? Number 10.
I would come here to
Number 107.
watch movies, yeah.
Wow.
So
That's incredible. So we're here with Christo. Is that how you pronounce your name, Christo?
Christo, yeah.
Christo Roppolo.
Yeah.
Where are you from? What's your ethnicities?
Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh.
Yeah, and at age 7, I moved out here with my mom, and we picked up in Monterey and kind of homesteaded with her brother for a long time, myself and my younger brother and my cousin, and we grew up in school and had the regular kind of, childhood that most people have. But before I came to Monterey, I had a slight encounter when I was a kid at a place called Benton Village in Cleveland, Ohio, which was in the first movie where, you know, a vehicle showed up and an impression of Bullwinkle Moose came up a ladder and bit me on the nose, and I woke up the next day and my parents were arguing, and from that point on, it's just been kind of like a feature of my life.
So that was basically the domino that started all of your other sightings?
Well, it was, you know, it was to me more like a dream, you know, than anything else. But when I woke up, it was real because my brother had taken all the diapers out of a hamper and put them up all over the windows to keep whatever was coming in through the window out. So there was, you know,
so he was aware of it too.
Yeah. And, you know, my parents had a tumultuous kind of relationship from that point on. There was a lot of trouble after that event. And, yeah, then eventually my mom moved us, my brother and I, they divorced, and we moved out to California and settled here in Monterey. And, you know, like when you have a mom that's working all the time and kind of in transition, you know, you're going from one place to another. And so kids, when you're doing that kind of stuff, tend to get in a lot of mischief. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we liked to do was we liked to go camping a lot. You know, we just kind of take off and get out of town and go down the coast to Big Sur. And a lot of times down there, we would, you know, we'd have talks about, you know, what we thought was going to happen, you know, this and that, you know, typical kid shit. And I'm down there with some friends, and we ran out of weed. We had no more pot left. So we were walking out of this campsite, and we went up to this place that's called The View, which is right above this parking lot in Palo, Colorado. And it looks at this big mountain range and down the whole valley in Big Sur. And so we decided we had one joint left, and we were going to go up to this view and just kind of stand there, because we'd been, you know, partying all weekend with these girlfriends of ours and their brother. And as we were coming up to the place where we were going to stand and smoke the pot, it looked like there was like some kind of a helicopter or something that was coming up from the ridge that was directly in front of us. And then simultaneously, while we're looking at that and trying to see what was coming up over the ridge, an orb, like the size of a basketball, a big red orb, started coming down the trail towards us. And it was, you know, like a flaming ball orb. My one friend, Jeff, he was kind of into science and stuff. He's like, it's got to be like, you know, ball lightning or something, because, you know, it's like tectonic action going on here.
And it was coming towards you?
Yeah. I'm like, bro, I don't
And he's
think...
there trying to analyze it and trying to
right,
go, oh,
you know,
there's
because
gotta
it's
be an
coming down the
explanation.
trail, literally like a person was walking down the trail very slowly and deliberately, and there was 6 of us there. 2 of the people were from out of town in Oregon, and they brought a bunch of mushrooms down. So we'd been toasting on mushrooms too, which coincidentally, I've done some research, and there is research to prove that that kind of opens doors.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with UFOs. And I didn't know it at the time, but it didn't hurt anything that happened. So we're looking at this thing, and it's coming towards us, and I'm like, okay, this is getting pretty trippy. And it went over us real slowly and quietly and gently. And so we turned, and the object that we couldn't see, that we thought was a helicopter, is coming up over this hill, now has presented itself, and it's a huge, like diamond-shaped, like cube thing, but it's just completely surrounded and shrouded in light, and it's turning, and it's like there's an opening in the middle of it. And so there's, you know, like 6 of us there, and I'm like, does everybody see this? And we all are looking at it, and we're all like, yes, we all see it. And my cousin got super scared, and him and my dog ran off. And so Cheryl, my girlfriend, and these 2 people from Oregon and her brother Jeff were all still standing there. And I'm like, why don't we just like kind of hold hands and just kind of look at this thing and say, look, you know, we're not dangerous. We see you. Do you see us? What's up? Right? Yeah. And so we did that, and we held hands, and pretty much within a second or so after we kind of just settled down and we're looking at this thing, it felt like the ground just started heating up underneath us, and this thing started pulsing. Wow. And that's like, this is like a jellyfish classically, but I didn't know it at that time what a jellyfish looked like or anything. And it started moving from the inside out, so it was opening up to us. And
So you could see that it definitely was communicating with you at that time.
It was opening like it had like a huge opening, and you couldn't see the end of it on the inside. And so this thing is presenting itself to us, and this electrical shock feeling came up my legs and everybody else's legs, and it hit us so hard that we were all like, huh? Kind of, yelled out like that, and I passed out, and everybody else passed out too, but just only for like a couple of seconds. So we were down on the ground when we all woke up, right? And this thing was gone. It was no longer there. And I was standing up, and as I was pushing myself up to get off the ground, I reached down onto the ground, and the ground was warm. And then you could put your hand in the places where we were, and just a couple feet or a couple of inches to the outside of that perimeter, and it was stone cold. So it was like everything was physically affected. And so we drove back to Monterey, and while we're driving back, this is in 1977, and it's a documented sighting that, the sheriffs got reports of it, and these objects were seen moving around in Monterey. And so we went home, and, it was like pre-cosmic trip, and sadly, the next day I got a phone call from my friend's daughter, Jeff's daughter, or sister, and her brother the next evening he took his own life. So from that point on, none of us ever talked about that sighting again,
man.
right? And it was like, when I made the first movie, I asked Cheryl, if she
I was going to ask you what their thoughts are ever since seeing your first documentary.
She's just, she knows about my research and what I do and everything, but you have to be kind of considerate of people because, the reason I bring that up is because a lot of times people think they're going to come to one of these sightings with me and it's just going to be, like a party or something. And I tell them, things can get pretty interesting when you do this. And if it's really happening, you'll know it because,
it's
undeniable. There'll be a little uneasiness there. And, people that I've done sightings with 50 times have had that kind of reaction to certain things, mostly when they get really close, and you have one of these orbs coming near you, they pulse, and they pulse this light thing. It's like they circle around each other, this pulsing thing, and when they do that, it disturbs the air, and if you're standing close to them, you can feel it in almost like pulses of
how close
wind or wave. I've been
to these
10 feet, 20 feet. The group of them came down by my house over in Monterey on Montecito prior to one of my big sightings, and they came down below this cloud bank that was like completely, there was no sky view or anything like that, and they came down over my neighbor's driveway. And I was in my living room, and I saw I had these shades that were hanging down. It's like a sliding glass door. And I saw this red light, and I figured, well, maybe it's a cop in the driveway or something. And I opened it up, and it was them. And there was 5 of them, and they were directly about 10 feet above my deck and the neighbor's driveway.
So you could really get a good look at these things.
Really good. No, and they're amorphous.
They showed up to say hi. Like,
yeah,
hey.
They're amorphous. They have this skin that is like a membrane, and it's able to change size quickly. And what we discovered recently in the last podcast I did, we discovered that a lot of my footage can, when they analyzed it and they really removed any artifacts and any digital noise or anything, almost all of the orbs have these giant cubes in them. And now, we're researching fission up at up the research laboratory up in Berkeley and stuff, where the accelerator is.
The particle accelerator?
Particle accelerator. And strangely enough, the fission reactor looks a whole lot like the orbs with the cube in it.
Oh, interesting.
It's a sphere with a cube in it.
I wonder where they learned that from, huh?
Right? And I did more research because 9 years before these pilots even saw any of the orbs pacing their planes or going to these military exercises, 9 years before, I had a scientist from MOFON, not specifically, but he's a physicist who did work with them at a government level for about 10 years. He was on the last interview, and he did all of the analysis on the video footage and, tore it apart really hard.
You tore apart the video footage?
Yeah, not like,
Oh, meaning just
physically,
dissected it and
yeah.
like instead of
Put
but
me
he
under the
didn't- he didn't-
microscope,
Okay,
and
but he didn't
really
try to
grilled.
debunk it, did he? Or did he?
Oh yeah,
try to-
absolutely.
Oh.
I've insisted on that because I've had a lot of really famous, a lot of really famous UFO researchers like Tom DeLonge and Luis Alessandro and all those people. They came up to a sighting, and
Oh, they were with you at a sighting?
they came up. Yeah, of course. They know from what they saw that I delivered even before things kind of broke loose with the movie and
So
stuff.
what were their thoughts? Like, because we've seen the Pentagon footage.
Well, they
We've seen
wanted
that
to
for
come up
years
and see
years.
what I did,
So that
so
must
they
have been
did.
interesting for them to see that themselves. Like,
It was interesting for me because they thought it was just misidentified planes and what have you. And I'm like, Tom, that's not the case. And I know your pal's like a really famous cinematographer or whatever, but you don't bring a fixed lens to a UFO party. You bring a zoom. And the reason is because when they present themselves, a lot of times they're mimicking. And some people don't understand that these things can come into an airspace and they're totally aware of how much air traffic is in the airspace.
Whoa.
Right? So sometimes if they don't have enough members in the group to say, like, do a triangle, what have you, two of them will position themselves so they'll fly along with another aircraft to make it a point of light. That helps them open a vortex.
incredible.
And while they're doing that, they can have things fly in and out of that without anybody even aware of it. So one of the things I've been trying to do recently that is going to be a little bit more challenging is to actually catch them close up doing that. And, it would probably require being in an aircraft or something like that. But there's a lot of stuff I want to do with my research that I just can't do because of, fiscal limitations or what have
Well,
you.
something just popped in my brain. You probably already thought about this, but with the way that a lot of these drones are so high tech, that might be interesting to give
Orbs
someone
do not like drones at all.
Oh.
And I don't like them in the airspace because they make a lot of noise. And even the quiet ones, they don't want to be scrutinized by any kind of a machine. And when you do that, you usually blow the sighting and they'll just shift back into the time corridor and disappear.
What is it that you suppose, why do you suppose that they have
The
such
machines?
well, like with the UFOs or the extraterrestrials, why do you suppose they have that
there's
specific
a
kind
theory
of
about
line?
extraterrestrial intelligence insisting on being the masters of their machines and not the other way around. If you have a symbiotic relationship with something that you kind of quote unquote use as a machine, that's going to be a hell of a lot different than having an artificially intelligent machine.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
That kind of works with you.
Because I've
That's
heard some of
something
these
that you
UFOs
can't.
are powered by the mind.
Right.
That's how they're powered.
Well, when we're doing the communication, when I'm signaling with them, that's exactly what it is. I'll show them a position and then they'll mimic it so that I know that they're not aircraft, that's them. But they have to wait until everything kind of is clear, and then the big one will present itself as an anchor point, and then at least two of them will draw out these energy bands from the big one, and that's how they open the vortex. But we actually, on the last podcast, unbeknownst to me, Chris, the scientist, actually found several frames of the vortex opening. Real.
Incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like what you would think it looks like because it segments what we perceive, in visual information. So it literally is almost like a tunnel. And, it's not like an incidental or an artifact or anything. Chris is really hardcore about that. He won't use any kind of software like, a Photoshop or anything. He's just using the raw basic tools in the computer so that there's no...
Right, so you can't be blamed for...
Right, there's no rounding of edges or any of that stuff to treat or filters. He's like the real McCoy scientist, which was, again, really telling to me. Here I am on the air the other day, and it's a real significant thing that I'm doing. It's the first time I think anybody, especially somebody like me, a field researcher, has said, look, I've waited for you guys to present all of your arguments. Now that you have, okay, I just watched this show called Australian 60 Minutes, and lo and behold, your own pilots are talking about something they didn't talk about in 60 Minutes America, which is these cubes
interesting.
in the sphere. And they're now seeing them flying along with them at 39,000 feet. The interesting thing about that is that I had that information for you 9 years prior to this, which...
Isn't that interesting?
They're
how
talking
that works,
about near
right?
misses and stuff like that. And I'm like, something about putting your boot on somebody's neck and saying, you are not important enough to be doing this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't choose to do this in the first place. These things came to me from time of being a kid till now, and like it became more serious obviously now because I'm doing it all the time, but that was their choice. And so my response is, when somebody says, how do you know that what you're seeing is what you think it is, and do you think it's what you think it is all the time? And I'm like, I don't waste my time, first of all, looking at anything that isn't what I think it is or what I know it to be. And if I worry about opinions and that vibration and energy of the naysayers, I will be defeated from day one, because these orbs are super respect demanding.
Well, I think the thing too is that a lot of these folks, they're not trying to form a relationship with these.
No.
You are.
Yeah.
So that's why they can stand on the outside.
Remember,
and
my
critique,
end
and
of
they're
the
not-
relationship, though, and I got to stop you and say, is very. I'm like the pupil. These things are like. Again, I have no idea why they decided to start doing this stuff with me, but it's gotten to all kinds of different levels. I've seen different craft. I've seen flying saucer, proper flying saucers. I've seen man-made flying saucers using their tech with our
Oh, so you can tell the difference for sure.
Definitely.
At this point, you dove so
the
far into it.
man-made artificial UFOs. It looks like a battleship or something, when you see them, that's the dark gray metal colors, rivets, nuts and bolts, glass dome, glowing lights and beacons on the outside. That's for some people who think that they're seeing an airplane, it's no big deal for a UFO to emanate some light to make anybody think that it's anything they wanted to. And also, just recently, an Air Force colonel was talking publicly about a piece of footage that he saw that they had vetted. The actual Air Force had vetted it because it was so important to them for the pilots to understand there is footage of what looks like a commercial aircraft, and it's flying along, and then it stops for 13 minutes in dead air. It just sits there for 13 minutes before it starts going again.
Oh, man.
Right? So that's a classic example of what I'm talking about with the mimicking. And remember...
And I've heard they hide themselves in clouds.
Right,
They
and
try
a
to
disc,
shape-shift.
too, is really kind of like if you took a plate and you went like this, it's a screen now. And if you're up in the air, right...
Whoa. Astonishing. I know. I had to cut this short because this is so power-packed with so much information. These conversations with Martin Schmidt and Christo Roppolo, I promise you, are going to continue. There are 2 more episodes that will contain these. However, if you notice, there was so much power-packed information going on in there, so many details. By the way, the awesome camera operator who is in the theater recording a lot of this for the third documentary with Christo is camera operator Gianfranco Ruggiero and his son. So he was in there recording stuff. Now, what you're about to hear next is in fact a fun fact by Henry D. Horse. Then we're jumping right in with Martin Schmidt. Oh my gosh. Another exciting deep dive into passion, mysteries. Because look at both of these guys are dealing with mysteries here. They're putting on their detective hats and they're diving in. Just following their passions. So, all right, let's listen. Let's listen in. All right? I'll be back a little bit later. Thanks for listening to Inspirado Projecto.
Ready?
Yoda was almost played by a monkey. According to the book, The Making of Star Wars by J.W. Rinsler, George Lucas originally planned for Yoda to be played by an adorable monkey wearing a mask and carrying a cane. Huh, what do you think of that? Stay tuned to Inspirado Projecto for more fun facts.
When I first walked in, I was just astonished by like just the architecture and everything, the whole history of this place. And so I said, you know, Cowboy was kind of showing me around a little bit and showed me the miniature that you made out there. And he's like, oh man, you really need to talk to my buddy Martin. Like we call him like the local historian. Like he just knows so much about this place. And do you want to find a place to
Sure,
sit?
let's go out in the lobby or the mezzanine or somewhere. I can give you a whole tour of the place if you like.
Yeah, I
Of course, you know, can't really convey visuals on a podcast, I guess. But
Yeah. That's all right. So the name of my podcast is Inspirado Projecto. So I'll send you a link once it's finished.
Cool. Yep.
So I just want to look at let's go take a look at your miniature for a second. Oh, good. The sock monkey guy. Do you make sock monkeys?
I make sock monkeys.
Oh, I love it.
I'll show you my gallery at some point.
Wait, how long have you been making sock monkeys?
20 years.
I love it, man. Oh my God.
Okay, just real quick here.
Yeah.
Hang on a sec.
Oh, this is great. Sock monkeys.
There you go. Go ahead and scroll through that.
Ooh, these are great. That's great, sock monkey and the golden banana.
Yeah.
Oh, you even got some extraterrestrials in
Yep,
there. Oh my gosh, you must have such a blast making these things.
mermaid.
That
There's
is
Elvis.
great. Oh, I love it. You ain't nothing but a sock monkey. Sock monkey's my co-pilot. Oh my God, these are great.
This is Leonardo da Vinci. I didn't actually make
Oh,
a monkey
yeah.
like that. I did that in Photoshop.
Oh my God.
Did that in Photoshop too.
Man, these are great. The sock father. You have got such a... Oh my gosh.
Now,
Look
you
at all
heard of
these
a real life Egyptian?
Tron!
Yeah,
Oh my God.
That's right. You heard of a real life Egyptian pharaoh? His name was Akhenaten. Well, this is Sakhenaten.
Oh, I love it. Sakhenaten. Oh my gosh. These are great.
The glowing stuff on Tron Monkey is called electroluminescent wire.
Oh, so that is
It's
actually
actually glowing, yes.
Oh my God, that is great. These little guys are phenomenal. Look, a little wizard.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, caveman.
Friend of mine in Carmel Valley wanted a clown.
You could totally make, I imagine these as trading cards. You could totally make a whole bunch of the monkeys!
That's
the
right,
sock monkey
you got it,
monkeys.
yes.
The sock monkeys.
I made the, they appeared here in 2016 for their 50th anniversary.
I love it. Oh my.
At least the surviving ones did.
Yeah.
Nesmith used to live in Carmel Valley.
Whoa.
Yeah, he passed away, as you probably know.
He did. I was very fortunate to see their farewell tour.
Oh, wow.
The very last night that he was there.
Wow.
Dude, I was bawling my eyes out the whole night. The love in there. Oh, everybody's singing,
yeah.
Well,
my wife and I-
what can
right.
it mean? We're all singing Davy Jones. We're like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah, they did that here too. Well, what happened was that Peter Tork and Mickey Dolenz wanted to do the 50th anniversary tour. Nesmith wasn't terribly interested. So the other two got backup musicians and they went on the road. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the places they came. It was in 2016, and my wife and I made sure that we would be here that night.
Oh,
which we
yeah.
were. And the really cool thing is that since Nesmith only lived over the hill, it was just a short drive over here, he came and joined the other two on stage after the intermission.
As a surprise?
As a surprise.
I love it.
The only venue on the entire tour where the three of them were together on
Oh
stage.
my gosh.
So what a treat that was.
When I saw that one before the farewell tour, I don't know, it must have been around 2016. They went to the
Yeah,
was
this
it the Marquee
wasn't
Theater?
actually the farewell tour. It was a 50th anniversary tour.
50th anniversary, yeah. So I think when I went to the 50th anniversary one, and I saw Peter had gotten sick during that thing, so Mike had substituted for a few of those. So that was one of the ones that I saw. And then just recently I saw the farewell tour, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be the last time. Because I was talking to Mickey's manager, and he goes, "Yeah, Mike had like like a triple bypass or something
Really? Oh, my
a few
goodness.
days before or something. I mean, it was like really in close proximity. So you saw him just like." He was just not the Mike you're used to seeing, but it was just so beautiful to see those guys working together and all the old footage.
Yeah.
I love that. Is that like
So
the Wicked
that's-
Witch of the West?
Yeah, like something like that. And this is Frankensock.
I love it.
And down here I've got Count Sockula.
Oh my gosh, these
Wait.
guys! You could totally make trading cards. I swear, these things are great. Is that like a Cub Scout?
Yeah, Cub Scout and an Eagle Scout up above here. And that's an
Oh, Eagle Scout.
Those were made as gifts They were commissioned by a lady I know who has grandchildren. One's an Eagle Scout and one's a Cub Scout.
Oh my gosh.
And so, to give you an idea of the detail I put into these things, I asked the kid's mom to photograph his uniform in as much detail as possible, which she did, and she did these beautiful close-up shots of every one of the patches that he had earned.
Oh my
And she told me the order in which he had earned them, and that is the order that
No
I put them on
way.
the sash.
What the heck?
I laid that all in Photoshop, printed it on printable fabric, which is a thing,
Oh yeah.
and then sewed that into the sash for the monkey to wear.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the neckerchief ring was made on my 3D printer.
Incredible. Man, you are so crafty. This is incredible.
Thank you.
Jeez, these little guys.
There's Bob Marley,
Ah!
Forest Ranger.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh yeah.
I normally stay
Bat
away
monkey,
from copyrighted.
bat sock
Right,
monkey.
I normally stay away from copyrighted characters, but that was ordered by a dear, dear, longtime friend of mine for her grandson. So,
Oh my God, you gotta do it. You gotta. I mean,
yeah,
it's
this is a
just-
science teacher.
I love
This
it.
was a gift for a little girl who loves science. These were all ordered by various people.
These are great.
And so I made a textbook.
yeah.
That's all right. I made a textbook for him on the 3D printer.
Oh my gosh.
And made printed a cover for it on a mailing label. And because he's a college professor, I made sure that his shirt clashes badly with his pants.
That's great. That's great.
Very few people would get that detail.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
So,
Oh my gosh, the detail you put
there's
into
the
these.
sheriff.
Look at
Here's
that guy.
now this
Like
pair
a
was
siren
ordered-
and a sailor, huh?
Exactly. Yes, this was ordered by a friend of mine who was just moving onto a houseboat in Moss Landing with his wife. That's where they live full time now.
Oh my God.
And he said he wanted a mermaid and one other. And I said, "You mean like a pirate?" And he said, "No, I don't want a pirate." And I said, "Well, how about a sea captain?" He was, "Yeah, salty
Oh
old
my
sea
gosh.
captain." And as soon as he said that, I could picture him with the beard and the braid on his
Yes. I mean, that would be a great like wedding cake top
yeah.
with those two, right? Like, hey, look at us. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is great. Little
That was
policeman.
ordered for a policeman who was recovering from surgery in the hospital. Nothing crime related, as far as I know.
I love this, man. That you these people order these little ninja.
That was for my grandson who's into ninjas right now.
Oh my God.
One of my grandsons, and the other one, he wanted a Lamborghini monkey, so I made a race driver for him.
Oh my
I have that in a
gosh.
different gallery.
This is great.
This was ordered by a lady last Christmas for her husband, who's a biker.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh my.
And this is
Is
a
this
welder.
I was just gonna
next
say, it
one
looks
shows
like a
his-
welder.
Next one shows his hood down. There you
Oh
go.
no way, that's great.
So I made the hood of the 3D printer as well.
Oh my gosh, man.
And speaking of
These are incredible.
the monkeys.
Yeah.
I started making all their band instruments on the 3D printer, and they're like half assembled in a bin in my garage. But then, of course, I had to do other things, and I put them on the back burner and never got back to it. But I wanted to set them all up, pose them on a stage, right? Build this little
Oh
set,
my
take
gosh.
a photograph, and turn it into a poster, like one of the posters you saw up above.
Oh my gosh.
So I didn't do that in time for to catch Mike while he was still alive, but.
The cool
Yeah,
thing is
and
Mickey's going
Mickey's
back
the
out
only
there
one
to
left.
honor his
Oh.
comrades. He's going to go out there to, in honor of those guys, which I just think is so great.
That's
man.
wonderful.
I love how active he is.
Anyways, and this is one of my favorites, a Parisian monkey. So here again. the
Bonjour,
baguette.
bonjour. He's got his baguette.
Baguette and the bottle of wine I made on the
at him.
3D printer, and it's all about the details.
Oh, I love it. Old Sox Chardonnay. Carmel Valley, that's where you said Mike Nesmith was living, right?
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know exactly where it was, but it was somewhere in Carmel Valley.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what I do for fun.
That is great.
And on the back of my card is the scan code for my YouTube channel.
Oh, good. I'll
Which
check it out.
I started
You got your
doing-
sock monkeys on your YouTube channel?
That's what it's all about, how
Oh
to
my
make them.
gosh, I love it. I love it.
So that's on the back.
The sock monkey guy. Oh my gosh. I've always loved sock monkeys. Oh my God.
So one of these days I'll have to do a video telling how I got into it. But
Oh yeah, for sure.
I started it during quarantine when I was out of a job and I had time in my hands. And now that I'm working again, there's precious little time to devote to YouTube anymore. But
Oh my God.
anyways, so here's
Yeah,
the
how long
one.
did it take for you to build this miniature?
In my spare time, about 4 or 5 years.
Wow. Look at the detail, man. You are a master.
Well, I
detail.
built it for 2 reasons. I'm the one who started the whole restoration effort.
Yes, I want to hear you talk about that. Cowboy was telling me it was all thanks to you that it was all because you guys want to keep this organ here, right? It started with that, didn't it?
Well, actually, it started a little bit before that. The organ was one of the tools, if you will, that we used to help it along. It is not the original organ, but it's the same model. It was built This theater opened in 1926. The organ that is now in it was built in 1928. It was originally installed in the Parkside Theater in San Francisco. It came out of there in 1938, went into a church in Salinas, and stayed there for just over 50 years. Then the church sold it to get a different organ. It went into storage, and that's where I found it.
Oh my gosh!
So that's a long story all
You just
itself.
chanced upon this organ. That's over there in storage.
I was doing research to try to locate the original organ, which I found.
Whoa!
Last I knew, it still exists. It's in Colorado now. But the original organ was removed from here in the 50s after rainwater leaked through the chambers on one side and damaged the pipework and the chest. So they sold it and pulled it out. It hadn't been used in years. So I was trying to locate the history of the original. And in the process of my doing that, of course, this is pre-internet, mind you. I started this whole adventure in 1988.
Whoa!
Long before the internet.
So you really had to be
long
detective
before
in this thing.
wide access to the internet, at any rate. Wow. So I spent a lot of time on the telephone and following up leads. This person says, no, I don't know, call this person, and so forth. So I finally managed to track down the original organ. But in the process, one of the people that I called told somebody else about me, who told somebody else, who put an item in the international newsletter of the American Theater Organ Society, which I had never heard of. If I had heard of that, I could have solved my problem with one phone call.
Right.
So, guy had lived in Fresno at the time. He now lives in Salinas. But he lived in Fresno. He was the owner of the organ that now is in this theater. And it was sitting in a warehouse because he had bought it when it came out of the church. And he was hoping to find a home for it. And he's an old theater enthusiast, too. So he called me. He saw the item in the newsletter. Fortunately, I published my phone number, and he calls me out of the blue, told me about this instrument, and said, would you like to install it in the theater? I says, when?
My gosh.
At the time, this building was owned by United Artists Theaters. Okay? And I should give you a sort of timeline if you have the time of the whole history of the theater anyway. So we contacted them, and it was just used for movies. The chambers were empty, had been empty since 1954. And so we contacted them and said, we got this organ. The theater was built for it, it was because it accompanied silent films, that's what it did. And would you like to install it in the theater? And they kind of scratched their heads like, why would you want to put a pipe organ in a theater? But the local manager, who had been manager of this place for many years, he knew what that all meant.
Yeah.
And so he kicked it upstairs to the district manager, who kicked it upstairs to corporate. And the man in the corporate office in Denver had been the manager of this theater in the 70s.
Oh my gosh, man.
He had worked his way up.
Little did you know.
Little did I know. I had no idea.
Look how the universe works.
So he made all the maneuvering necessary for it to happen. And a group of volunteers, including myself, I did most of the wiring on the instrument that needed to be done. We started installing the instrument in, I think it was June of 1992, and we finished around September of 95.
Incredible.
Then we started showing silent films with a company on the organ, which is what it was built for. And playing concerts to much acclaim and much enjoyment. And so we kept that up for several years, and then in 2004 the theater was sold to a private owner. It may have shown its last movie. The projectors are still up in the booth, but they're shoved off to the side. It would take a lot of work to set them up again.
Well, the funny thing is, speaking of the projectors, Cowboy
Those
was
are the
telling me that
originals,
was the mayor, right? He
Was
was
he
the mayor.
really?
Yeah, he said that was the mayor and the projectionist.
Oh, it could be.
So the mayor of the town was also a projectionist, apparently.
I don't know all of the projectionists. It's entirely possible because it's been a small town, for decades, century. So it's entirely possible that was the case at one point. I don't know all of the projectionists that were here. The only name I can remember was Buck Russo. And it's been so long I can't even remember what years he was here. Anyway, this is the original Vitaphone equipment. As you can see, these are records that would play, and the disc was synchronized with the projectors mechanically.
You got to be kidding me! So there's a needle on that. The record is playing this music,
This was early sound technology before they put the soundtrack on the film.
Whoa, man!
It was only in use for a few years.
So they really had to sync that up.
Yep. And of course, the problem was that this medium was fragile, and so was the film, which was nitrate film in those days. And you know about nitrate film, right?
No.
It's highly flammable.
Oh my gosh!
And
the light bulb is hot shooting through there.
Oh,
God.
It was an arc lamp. It was 2 carbon rods with this bright, hot arc going through it.
Whoa.
So, as you will see, if you ever look at old pictures of projection booth, there are these metal shutters, big, thick steel shutters over the projection ports. And there's all this cabling up here with fusible links in it. And if a fire started this film magazine, that stuff burned so fast, this was basically a bomb. All right, so if a fire started, it would immediately melt the link above the projector, and then all the ports would slam shut. And the poor projectionists would be trapped inside
Oh my
this
gosh!
fireproof booth
No
with
way!
this raging inferno, yeah.
Did the projectionist, do you think the projectionist knew this going into it? He's like, okay,
yeah.
you're going to
It
be a
was common
projectionist.
knowledge.
You might end up dying up there in a fire.
It was common knowledge.
Oh, jeez.
And all of the storage bins
God.
up there were steel. There was not a stick of wood in any projection booth, any fire-rated projection booth back in those days. So that was the case up, I don't know exactly when they switched to nitrate. I think perhaps it was in the late 30s, early 40s, but I'm not really sure. You'd have to consult another historian about that. When they switched, from nitrate to what they call safety film, which is what they use now. Anyhow, so the Vitaphone process used a wax disc, an audio disc that was mechanically synchronized with the projector. They were experimenting with sound for many years before that, but the problem was always how to keep the two synchronized. And then finally, the Vitaphone process came along, I think it was 1927. So it was the first one to mechanically synchronize, if I remember the history correctly. I'm not an authority on this. To mechanically synchronize the two. The problem was that the disc would occasionally become scratched. And of course, at some point, the film would break and get spliced together and lose a few frames.
Oh, boy.
So if you wanted to see a Vitaphone picture, you had to do it within like the first week or so that it was in the theater to get the best experience.
Oh, my gosh.
Because after that, there'd be little glitches and the sound of the picture would get out of sync.
It's incredible.
And then that was only a couple of years lasted. And then they came up with the sound on film process with the optical soundtrack on the film itself, which solved all those problems.
Wow, it's incredible. Were you ever a projectionist?
No, I never was. I did go up to see the booth in 1976. They had a 50th anniversary celebration of this theater because it opened in 1926. And I went, and it was an open house. You could wander all over the theater. I made a big mistake. First place I went was the projection booth. The old Union projectionist up there was such a wonderful guy, full of so many fascinating stories, one after the other.
Oh, my gosh.
I spent the entire afternoon up there and never got to see the rest of the place.
Oh, my gosh, it's incredible.
So I missed a few things, but anyhow, I made up for that later. But that happened, that 1976 50th year celebration, happened right after United Artists, for economic reasons, was forced to triplex the house. They put walls in the balcony and made two tiny theaters up there with a tunnel between them so the same projection booth could serve all three auditoriums. And we'll go up there later and I'll show you. You can still see some remnants of what it was like. So the local manager regretted that they had to do that, but he didn't have a choice. So he made sure that it was done gently so that it could possibly be undone at some indeterminate point in the future, never knowing whether or not if it would actually happen.
Wow.
So we're very fortunate. In Merced, the Merced Theater there, which was designed by the same architects as this one, I'll tell you about the architects too, opened about the same time. When they multiplexed that house, which I think was about the same time in the 70s, they did a much more thorough job. They completely gutted the entire auditorium to the concrete walls. Destroyed all of the ornamentation. It was much more elaborate than this theater is.
No.
And they put 4 auditoriums in there. But, fortunately, the man who was manager there at the time went around and photographed in color, in detail, all of the auditorium. And he kept those photos for decades.
Oh, my God.
Finally, a few years ago, the city of Merced bought the place, and they restored it.
And it's all thanks to those photographs.
All thanks to the photographs. Otherwise, there would be no record of what it looked like.
Thank God he followed that inspiration at that moment, man.
Yep.
You never know when that stuff is going to come into play
Never
later
do.
on in life.
Yeah. Or even if it's going to survive.
Right.
You know, it's so ephemeral. It's because of that one man that they were able to restore that theater. And it was much more elaborate than this one. This looks like a Moorish castle inside, but that one looked like an actual town with buildings down the sides. The two sides were not symmetrical. And it had a blue sky overhead, same as this one.
So cool.
So I can tell you about the architects.
Yeah.
Their names were James and Merritt Reed, R-E-I-D. They got their start in Evansville, Indiana in 1878. The first building they designed there was the Willard Library, which is still there to this day. And they actually have a history center, all about Reed Brothers there. I contacted them and got some information many years ago. Eventually, they were hired by a resident of Emmonsville whose name was Elisha Babcock to come out to the coast, to the west coast of San Diego, and design a hotel for him. That was what is now the Hotel del Coronado. Opened in 1888, I believe it was. It was the first hotel I think it was the first hotel on the west coast, possibly in the country, to feature electric lighting throughout.
Oh my gosh.
They were very innovative for their day.
We played there once, and I loved that
Did you
place.
really?
And I
Yeah.
heard that Frank L. Baum made the crowns that are in this particular banquet room.
Oh, I
Frank
didn't
L.
know
Baum
that.
wrote a lot of Wizard of Oz
Yes,
there.
yes, he was. Okay, wow, okay. That's really cool.
Yeah. That's
So,
their
yeah,
hobby.
the same architects designed this theater.
Whoa.
And then they moved from San Diego, they moved up the coast to San Francisco, and that's where they did the bulk of their work. They designed San Francisco's first skyscraper, which was the home of the San Francisco Call newspaper, so it was called the Call Building. It's still there to this day, but it was given a facelift in the 60s, I think it was, so you wouldn't recognize it, but the structure underneath is still there. It survived the 1906 earthquake with almost no damage at all.
Whoa.
They designed lots of other theaters, and this was one of them, and the Merced Theater, and many, many others. And they designed the residences of the Spreckles family of Spreckles Sugar. Numerous other residents as well. I have a whole binder of information on Reed Brothers.
Wow.
So, collecting all this is the work of many, many years.
Oh, yeah.
And no small expense either. So, the model here, I built it for two major reasons. One is because if you've looked at the front of the building as it exists today, you can see a lot of the ornamentation is missing. It was all chiseled off, probably in the 50s. I don't know exactly why, if the concrete was starting to spall and they wanted to take it off, or if they were trying to modernize the place. And then if you look at the storefronts on ground level, you'll see that there are all these narrow arches today. That was done in the 1960s during urban renewal.
Oh.
We lost a lot of historic buildings around the country during that period. And so they remodeled the ground floor, and let's see, the original rectangular marquee had been replaced with a triangular one in the 50s sometime. But they remodeled the ground floor to 60s aesthetic in the 60s, but they didn't touch the rest of the building, which probably is as well. So it's this weird mishmash of all these different architectural styles today. And I had scoured old photographs, which I laboriously collected. Unfortunately, the owner of this theater 2 owners ago stole my collection. Never returned it.
Oh, no.
But I have copies of most of the photographs, not all of them, but most of them. And which is fortunate, they're in storage somewhere. The man who supplied me with those photographs was a local historian named Pat Hathaway, and he died of COVID early this year.
Oh, man.
And so his collection, which still exists, but it's in limbo. I have no idea where it is. They're trying to decide what to do with it, who to give it to. I think it's supposed to go to the UC Berkeley Architectural Library or something. But it was a massive collection of over 80,000 images of history all over the peninsula.
Whoa.
It was an incredible resource.
Whoa.
So,
Boy, wouldn't that be nice if they let you take a peek at that, huh?
So I have a lot of copies of photographs over in his collection.
Wow.
There might be more, but who knows? And we lost a dear friend too. So anyway, but the other reason I built this, the first reason was so people could see what it looked like as clearly as I do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the other reason, so they would tend to inspire them, hopefully, to get it restored. The other reason I built it was to serve as a guide for restorers. And so I made every effort to be as accurate as possible, okay? To get dimensions for the place, I did extensive measuring. I even climbed up on the roof of the building at the corners.
Those are amazing, man.
So I had a long string. I
Gosh.
tied a weight to the end. I climbed up to the roof, and I let the string down until the weight touched the ground. Then I put a piece of masking tape on it, marked ground level. And then I started pulling the string up until it reached various strategic points of interest. Put a piece of tape on the string at that point and wrote down what it was. So then I had this vertical measurement. Then I took the string home, laid it out in the driveway, and started measuring all these distances. So that's how I was able to make it accurate.
Incredible. Incredible.
So most of this ornamentation is
So
made from cast
intricate.
resin. A friend and I, his name's Gary Parks, who was instrumental in helping me with this. He's a commercial artist himself, and he did a lot of the sculpting. So he and I divided up the sculpting. We carved the original pieces in jeweler's wax. Then I made silicone molds of them and poured these copies in castable resin.
Oh my gosh, Martin, this is crazy how intricately detailed this is. I'd love to get in there with a magnifying glass and look at some of this stuff.
Well, I can help you there.
Like, and what's interesting? Oh, you can open this
I
up.
brought the key with me.
Oh my God. I mean, like the building this building and choosing to put these specific things on the building. You know, imagine being that architect. And
Well,
you're
actually,
like,
there's an interesting detail about that too. I haven't got any hard evidence of this, but if you take a look, I've seen pictures of what they call the reredos. You know what that is? It's a piece behind an altar in a Catholic church that goes up the wall. So it's like a back altar piece. Okay. The one in Carmel Mission looks very similar to this. Whoa. To this center section. So I'm pretty sure that Reed Brothers went around town looking at old buildings and probably went to the mission, which would still be ruined in those days, and probably saw the reredos out there behind the altar and copied parts of it.
wow.
That's my theory. I don't have any proof of that.
I mean, it's such a great theory. And like, I mean, just choosing the like the eagles and the specific things, the way that they're specifically put that way, and then to know that you're putting this stuff up here, and to know that you're doing this for your own. Well, obviously, it looks great on the building. However, people on the ground floor cannot see that intricacy. You know, I mean, you know, so that's what's so cool to think that they chose to carve it so detailed, despite whether anybody could actually see it up close or not. You know, that's pure art right there. Wow. I'm eating some Cracker Jacks right now. Wow. I heard this funny story told by Jimmy Fallon. He was saying that he was hanging out with Jack Nicholson at like a Dodgers game or something. And Jack Nicholson gets some Cracker Jacks. He's like looking around in there. And he looks so disappointed. And Jimmy's like, "What's the matter, Jack?" He's like, "Oh, geez. What's the matter, Jack?" He's like, "I remember when I was a boy and I'd get Cracker Jack. And in the bottom would be something metal, like a tin whistle or a train. And so every time I eat Cracker Jacks, I think about that because, like, what's this? A sticker of... I mean, I might as well open it on camera so we could both arrive at this. It says here, lift and peel. I'm ready to do it. Lift and peel. Are you ready? Drum roll, please. I said a drum roll, please. Oh, it looks like an explosion. Really, it looks like a like a blast, like a fire blast. So there you go. In my day, you got yourself a tin whistle. My day, you got yourself a tin whistle, not a fire blast sticker. My day, you got something metal like a little train. You can take the train out there when you're playing in the woods. Make up your own train tracks. Chugga chugga choo choo. I'm the nature train. Chugga chugga choo choo. Why, hello there, Mr. Apple Tree. Hello there, Mr. Apple Tree. Have you settled your differences with Mr. Orange and his associates? Very happy to hear that. How are you doing, Mr. Banana Tree and Avocado Tree? Very nice. Hello, Mrs. Blackberry's bush. Looking ripe as ever. Looking ripe as ever. All right, folks. Thank you. Oh, before we go, I gotta play this for you. I'm so excited. Here we go. Phil got this for me. Do you hear this? It's inside this box. Philly Ocean got this for me. What a sweetheart, huh? God, man. Got me this. I love this. never alone. You're never disconnected. You're home with your own. When company's expected, you're well protected. Then you are set with a capital J, which you'll never forget till they cart you away. When you're a jet, you stay a jet. Bow, bow. When you're a jet all the way from your first cigarette to your last dying day. When you're a jet, you're this swinging this thing, little boy, you're a man, little man, you're a king. Oh, you're never alone, you're never disconnected. You're home with your own. When company's expected, you're well protected. Then you are set with a capital J, which you'll never forget till they cart you away. When you're a jet, you stay a jet. Anyway, you get the point. You get the point. Thanks for listening to Inspirado Projecto. There's more to come. Just more to come. And thank you, Mr. Rob Broski, the woodsman from Twin Peaks, for seeing us out. Thank you.
This is Robert from Twin Peaks, and you're listening to Inspirado Projecto. Got a light?
It's a face palm, a bomb of calm, like a napalm bomb. It's a face palm, crumbly malm of loamy alms. And how soon do you think you to do it again? It's a face palm, here it come alms, playing Brahms and prom. And how soon do you think you to do it again? And the Holmes from Guam to the cable comes, are the Rom diatoms glom in their moms. It's a face palm, the book of psalms and rhymes and rhymes. And how soon do you think you'll do it again?